The Nets be losing, so we're going to bring in B-Lou. The New York Post Nets beat writer Brian Lewis is here, but he's here to spread love the Brooklyn way. Happy New Year, Brian. We're going to try and keep this thing as upbeat as possible when we're talking about this team. Obviously, they've kind of been underachieving throughout the last couple weeks. But we'll start with Thursday's news that broke that Brooklyn got hit with a $100,000 fine for violating the league's player participation policy. Can you give us a little bit more details on the fine and the investigation?
Sure. Well, I guess for those that, aren't up on all things Nets, let's go back to the beginning. Last Wednesday, the Nets sat Nick Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Cam Johnson all against the Bucks. They sat them outright, and then they pulled Mikal Bridges and Cam Thomas and Royce O'Neal all in the first quarter. All right. The league opened investigation fairly quickly, if not the next day. If it wasn't Thursday, then it was definitely by Friday morning. So we broke that news that the league was investigating them and was considering fining them. As we all know, yesterday the fine came down $100,000. This was less about the Nets per se than it was about the league just making clear that these rules are going to be taken seriously and that you can't flout these rules, you can't ignore them. And I will tell you, organizationally, the Nets know this was a bad look, the whole thing. The sitting, the fining, it's embarrassing. And I will tell you, organizationally, they know that. But that's the situation that they're in. They're moving forward. But I will say, it's not something that, after the fact, they're taking lightly. They know what this looks like.
Do you think this would have been bigger national news had it been the Lakers as opposed to the Nets who've been struggling?
Oh, yes. Anything the Lakers do is going to be magnified compared to what the Nets do. Okay. That's not even in question. Well, I wouldn't even limit it to the Lakers. If it was Golden State or if it was, some other team that is a bigger national story.
All right, let's get into this team, how they've been struggling. In pro sports, we have X's and O's, but there's also the Y's. The Nets have lost 5 straight. Why haven't the X's and O's led to wins? Is it more of the players? Is it the X's and O's? And when we talk about the players, we can include a slumping Cam Thomas in on that.
Right. Well, I would say it's all of the above. Yes, Cam Thomas is slumping. Yes, he's missed 20 straight shots, it's crazy to see because we've been spoiled at how good he is at making tough shots. So it's shocking to see him miss 20 shots of any caliber. The slump is really longer, really. You're talking about 10 of their last 11. But in this 5-game losing skid, listen, they have the 4th worst offense and the 4th worst defense. That's hard to do, right? So it's no shocking that they've got the worst net rating in that span. There's really no aspect that hasn't been poor. But the clip note version is their offense is flawed and people are catching up to it. This is a team that is not going to be efficient from the floor, so they have to shoot threes. That's the only way they can survive. And it's a make or miss league. Right now, those threes are not going in, and people have figured out how to take those away, right? They're not worried about the downhill drive. They're not worried about the pick and roll. They are worried about moving them off the line and contesting when they can't. So that's a problem because the roster is what the roster is. Now you're going to get back Lonnie Walker IV, who's one of their better offensive players. Cam Thomas eventually will shake out of this. So I do think the offense will start to regress back to somewhere in the middle, not as good as it was in the beginning of the season, not as bad as it is now. But unless they start defending, it's not going to matter because ultimately that's where they're going to have to make their bones.
Well, you got a chance to talk to Cam. Would you attribute the slump to the pressure then? Him feeling like he's got to be the scorer?
No, Cam is very comfortable being the scorer. If you give Cam the opportunity, he's fine living in that space of being a number one option. He's fine with that. I would say he's a young player. There are going to be ups and downs. He started to experience this a little earlier in the season when he had to get used to being the number one guy on a game plan. And by that, I mean the number one guy on somebody else's defensive game plan where he's the first name on the board. That was a new experience for him. But I'd say in a lot of these cases, some of these shots, I mean, his shot profile is not bad. His shot profile is, I mean, he always takes tough shots, right? But his shot profile is not one that are shots that he hasn't made before. He's just a little bit off. He's just missing. He's not being forced into shots that he doesn't normally take. He's just in a slump.
So he's got a chance to get out of that slump tonight. The Nets are 9th in the East, and they're going up against the team that's 2nd in the West. OKC is playing some great basketball right now. Can the Nets play spoiler? And if they can, how do they do that?
Well, I mean, the Nets weren't horrible in OKC the other day. But for one, they have to defend. They cannot think that they're going to just shoot their way out of this. Now, to defend, that means they've got to trust, and that's been an issue. And by that, I mean, as you know, listen, when you're defending, helping the helper is a big deal, right? If I can't rely on the guy over there to come rotate and help me, I'm going to be less likely to go over there and help over there because that makes me look bad on film, right? That's part of their issue. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's a big chunk of their issue, and it's something that's been missing. Now, why we're sitting here this deep into the season and we're still talking about trust issues, that I can't answer. But that's an issue, and that's one that they're going to have to solve. Whether that gets solved tonight, I don't know. But it's one that they're going to have to get solved before they win in any tangible, real way.
Brian Lewis, thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.